A couple of years ago, I made a video about the future of Berserk. It was half analysis and half conjecture towards the release schedule of the series, which is rather slow. Towards the end, I stated that at the current pace, the series would meet its end in about 15 years. The pace has gotten a lot worse ever since then. We went from getting 6 chapters in 2018 to 2 chapters in 2019, and now we sit at 2020 with the prospect of only getting 2 again, or maybe 3. But it doesn't help when Miura delays things when they're announced to be in a magazine, either. This is not going to be cutting it if we're going to meet that prediction of ending Berserk in 15 years. But why is this the case, you ask? Well, in 2019, Kentaro Miura started a new series called Duranki. This series, unlike Berserk, was created in mind to train a group of up-and-coming manga assistants to help Miura increase the output of his illustrations. In interviews long past, Miura always attested that what took him the longest with creating Berserk was his obsession with detail. It's no surprise either, some pages of this manga are mind-bogglingly constructed. It just turns out that this turned into a double-edged sword for him eventually, as his speed naturally started to decrease, whilst his obsession only increased. One of the biggest hiatuses in 2013 was caused due to Miura's desire to create a new manga, Gigan Tamakia, and that was fine. Working on a manga like Berserk for 25 years straight will naturally take it out of you, and so a new volume-long series like Gigan Tamakia seemed like a lot more of a welcome change of pace. But move forward a couple of years, and the releases for this series remain sparse and separated. Like the existence of Gigan Tamakia, this current sparseness was due to another series. This series is Duranki, and I got a problem with it. Kicking off with a double chapter release, Miura had some words to say alongside it. He describes the series as a training ground for his assistants, in the hopes that their artwork will slowly attune a likeness to his own, with the goal of them eventually working on Berserk itself. For the first time ever, Miura admits in this interview that he needs further assistance in order for Berserk to reach its end. So he started a new manga instead. If it was a matter of improving artwork, then surely they could still do that whilst working on Berserk. Even if one was to bring up the argument that Miura didn't get them to start on Berserk because it would decrease the artwork quality, that still doesn't hold up, because it wouldn't be the first time that Berserk's artwork degraded from a change in production. When Miura first moved from traditional to digital artwork, the artwork for Berserk decreased as everything began taking on a completely different tone. But firstly, it was perfectly understandable from a reader's perspective, and secondly, it eventually improved. Why not let the same process happen again for his assistants? Just like it was acceptable to lose a bit of quality to enable a shift to digital, it's acceptable to lose a bit of visual quality in order to train up-and-comers. Furthermore, the artwork wouldn't even be a problem, because if anything, Duranki looks slightly better than Berserk at the moment. For whatever reason, Miura and his team are now working on Duranki, with Miura still doing the storyboards, the draft, and the final modifications. He clarifies in this interview that final modifications are a unification of each of his assistants' different drawing styles. Now look, it's absolutely fine if Miura personally wanted to start a new manga and not work on Berserk. It's just, that's not what he said. He and the magazine has sold Duranki to us as something which will improve the quality and quantity of Berserk, even though it's ironically taking all the hands that were working on Berserk away from it. For reference, we got 2 chapters of Berserk in 2019, whilst Duranki received 3, but Duranki has longer chapters than Berserk, averaging 30 pages instead of 20. Duranki has received 87 pages in the span of 2 months. That's 3 chapters for Duranki, and for that page count, that would have been 4 chapters for Berserk. Add that to what was Berserk's chapter count already that year, and that would have been 6 chapters in 2019. And look at that, an increase in previous years, fulfilling the goal that Berserk's releases would increase. But no, instead we speed up releases by taking all hands off of Berserk and ensure that, actually, it'll slow down for the indefinite future. The only reason I'm so irritated at all of this is because it would be fine if Duranki was labelled as a 1-volume manga series like Gigan Tamakia, but this isn't the case. With the flow of the story, it could easily last multiples of volumes. In its first 100 pages, and that's where we're at now, this manga has taken us practically nowhere. With 1 chapter being released every 2 months, it would take an entire year for a volume to release. 12 months of certainty that Berserk will remain either on a complete hiatus or a heavily staggered release like this. So, then, the only natural question comes up. How many volumes will Duranki last? Well, it's a simple equation of a year for a volume of manga, and if this volume is anything to go by, we're in this for the long haul. Even 5 volumes sounds optimistic for this series right now. We just got nothing but opening exposition, and it could keep going that way for a long time. And hey, maybe that exposition could start getting really good, and even make us forget about Berserk. That's one of the positives here, because a 5-year run sounds optimistic so far. Just let that sink in for a second. Does that mean 5 chapters of staggered Berserk across those 5 years? 10 chapters, if we're lucky? This status quo is simply inviting the likelihood that we might never see the end to this series. And that's a real shame because, as we can see, all the skills to create Berserk are already there, right in front of us. And yet it just isn't happening, because all those hands are working on Duranki. Perhaps the real issue isn't how long it takes for Miura to draw, but Miura's unwillingness to accept help on something as personal to him as Berserk. For Berserk, Miura states that for years, he has been doing almost everything by himself. For Berserk, I do almost everything myself, the characters and the backgrounds. I only give the assistants the toning, buildings, soldiers, etc. These days, I let them do the ground too. We can deduce that Miura is working his assistants on a new manga so that he can move them onto Berserk when they have begun matching his style enough. But therein lies the problem. When is it ever going to be enough? Where has Miura set this bar of quality? If the one constant in this had been Miura struggling to offload any large amount of work onto his assistants, and if he has a precedent of not offloading a lot of work to his assistants, then working them up won't do much to change that. He could have hired any level of artists from the get-go and it still wouldn't have increased production time with this attitude of starting on a new manga altogether. This isn't a problem of assistants needing to develop their artwork. This is a problem of Miura's unwillingness to give Berserk to his assistants, and Duranki is the biggest manifestation of this problem so far. Conversely, if he's doing this to protege his employees, then why not have them work on something as big as Berserk? It would be an incredible thing to have on your resume. But Duranki? Right now, it's nothing. It's alright, I guess, but it's not selling hotcakes worth of magazines whenever it's confirmed to come out, like Berserk. To go over it quickly, it roughly follows an ancient Mesopotamian legend and focuses on the adventure of a child called Usumgulu. Usumgulu looks feminine but is actually devoid of gender entirely and is ironically very sexualized, almost excessively so. Kind of like that weird moment in Gigantomachia where Prome asks to pee, and it's an odd manga, for sure. I'll be honest with you right now, there is nothing that interests me about it. Both Berserk and Gigantomachia managed to build breathtakingly bold worlds in their first 3 chapters. Hell, in their first 10 pages. Duranki, meanwhile, is boring. It's even more of a shame considering how utterly beautiful the artwork is. Staggeringly beautiful. And yet this series has been created as a runway for artistic improvement. Nothing about this artwork needs improvement. What needs improvement is the growing rate of hiatuses that Berserk undergoes. And that's something that even Miura himself attests to now. Whilst this is apparently the solution that Miura is addressing, it remains that Berserk is coming to us around once a year, and will remain so for the foreseeable future. So, to update the future of Berserk for 2020, things are looking kind of grim. A lot grimmer than they were a couple of years ago, and even then it seemed grim. Let's just hope that the future of Berserk 2021 is a video worth making. If you throw a buck my way, like these lovely people, you'll get access to the script for my next video, and get to see the video before anyone else. There are no tiers, just videos for a buck. But if you want to put down more than that, then that's greatly appreciated as well. Subscribe, comment your thoughts down below, and have a wonderful night.